Thank you. Moving on now to review of the agenda. Does anybody have anything to adjust or delay, or I'm seeing negative head nods?
Let's roll with it.
We're gonna roll with it. Do I have okay, so we're going on to public comment for items not on the agenda. I do not see any members of the public online or in the room, so can I just skip it, or do I need to open and close it anyway?
You do not.
Okay, skipping public comment. Consent agenda, any comments on that? Anybody?
I believe, did you have a question about the enterprise zone letter? Aaron?
Well, I would welcome a little more background because I am a little unclear on exactly what we're signing.
Okay.
And if you could just give us a primer, that'd be
Sure.
great.
So enterprise zones are through the Office of Economic Development and International Trade as a way to try and add financial resources, boost the economies, especially local business starts and or adding employees to existing businesses within certain depressed or challenged geographic areas. Socioeconomically is their main criteria, average wage, poverty rate, things like that. And so every 5 years, the state is asked to reevaluate the criteria that the existing enterprise zones are based on. And for us, and Region 10 is our administrator of that program. And so that when they looked at the data for this last 5 year snapshot, they saw that some areas such as in Hinsdale County, their average wage and employment stats had gone up to the point that they were no longer eligible for it. It does require even the existing communities to support continuing to provide that tax credit. So it's a tax credit for businesses, which they can use themselves. They can also broker those tax credits and turn them into cash if they need to use those for other purposes. But it's a positive program that provides financial resources for the businesses in the Norwood and Wrights Mesa area. That's the only area of our county that is eligible to be an enterprise zone. So to me, it's a no-brainer that we would want to continue to advocate for our area of the county to remain in that enterprise zone. When businesses are considering relocating to an area, sometimes that is a factor because they know not only by starting their business or relocating their business there, they can receive some significant tax credits. They can also then after that, as they add each new employee, they get a significant tax credit that again can be turned into cash.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hello.
Yes, it is just what I was hoping to hear, and I am in full support, and I'm glad it's on our consent agenda.
Excellent.
Likewise, do I have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye as well. The consent agenda passes unanimously. We are moving on to item 7A, the very pleasant discussion with Art Goodtimes regarding Maria Stark's replacement as the Intergovernmental Indigenous Speaker Working Group leader. And
He may not make it.
okay, we are a little bit early. That was going to be at 9:40. Do you think we should maybe move on to item 8 and circle back? Assuming Maria could stay, I mean, the item 8 is supposed to take 10 minutes, so we'll be visiting with you 5 minutes late.
No.
That work out? Okay, let's go then to item 8A, County Veterans Service Officer update. Mikhail Madsen, our Veterans Service Officer. It's so nice to see you.
It's nice to see you guys.
Take it away.
Some documents to pass around. These are the latest numbers of Veteran Service Office for San Miguel County. Numbers are up, and that's good news. We can see that we've increased fourfold from $56,000 in 2023 to almost $200,000 in compensation numbers. And those are still oncoming. As you guys know, my claims take between 3 and 5 months to arrive, so this is good work and good news. In other news, GDX will be out in September. For last year, GDX is gonna be the federal audit of all of our county numbers for all the counties in the nation. So we're gonna compare our numbers to their numbers, but they'll have better numbers from that side. And that'll come out next month. I looked up this morning and it wasn't available.
What does that mean for us, Mikhail?
It means that we can reconcile my numbers, which this is a state software versus the federal software. And once we can reconcile, we can take the per capita of all the veterans that are getting and see them come up the bottom. Right now, we're second to last, and my goal is to climb that ladder all the way to the top as fast as possible.
Second to last on what measure in the state?
Capita.
Per capita, as far as VA expenditure per capita, so the federal government spends millions of dollars in our county. We just divide that by the 290 veterans that we have in the county, and that way we can get the per capita. We do that with all 63, 64 counties in the state. We're second to last.
Goodness.
And that was these numbers are terrible, and that's not okay with me. And I'm working really hard to get the word out to the veterans that we have a new VSO and that we can get claims. On that note, the newspaper article came out in the Plains Dealer last month. A journalist approached me. She did a piece on that, and because of that piece, we're able to get between 4 and 5 veterans call me. Yes, I have claims that I have not touched. I want to get involved. We have started that process, so that's been a very positive note. Another obstacle that I want to report is we had my first price denial of an active duty captain in Erie County for tinnitus, something that should be easy to get, and we were denied twice. At that point, I approached the captain and asked him, would you be interested in getting a PMO, private medical opinion? These are out of pocket. These are not covered. What the VA has a duty to assist. Once they deny you twice, you have to appeal. Those appeals takes between 2 years to 3 years. He paid $500 for that private medical opinion, and he did get rated. And I want to bring your attention, if it would be possible that we have a $500 grant, if we can put language in it that we can put private medical opinions as part of something that they can apply to the county. The county, I can look at their case and see how strong their case is, say, yes, this claim would benefit in having a private medical opinion. I looked quickly at the prices right now for primary care. Private medical opinion is around $500. If you want a specialist, it's around $1,500. But I think it's a disservice to the veterans that they have to come up with this money, something that they've earned. And the VA's, being the almighty bureaucracy that it is, they sometimes miss the mark.
Mikhail, I was just looking to Carmen because I know that we have an emergency veterans reserve amount in the budget. And we always keep 500 in there for that, and that's something I think we can visit on during our budget season about increasing that potentially to something like $1,000.
I'm sorry, I think we do have 1,000.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Right now.
Okay,
That an annual allocation, like an annual line item?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been used for emergency rent or food assistance or transportation in the past. But we could expand the uses for this.
I think this would give a really excellent return on investment as far as, it's obviously we have emergencies with the rent and mechanical, but I've passed out a couple of those. I haven't received them back. It's up to the individual, the veteran to fill it out. So for me to pass it on to my manager to get acceptance. In other news, I wanted to share a couple of narratives. Of course,
Before we go there, I just have a question. The people who generally are needing this reimbursement, are they in financial, straits? Because another place that could potentially serve that would be something like the Good Neighbor Fund, which is a nonprofit fund that the Tyrite Foundation runs for emergency support. Not that I'm saying we shouldn't, but I just want to think about all of our options and which would be the most appropriate.
I wonder if in their policy, if, I've used that, and I think it's because you are in financial straits and they are asking for reimbursement. So the person has to come up with, pay for it and show the invoice to them, and then they'll reimburse them. But perhaps I'll make a note and research that, make sure that this would qualify under their policy.
It's worth thinking about,
Mhm.
because anyway.
Commissioner Brown, I think that, well, I like the idea of trying to keep our eyes open on the wider
Yeah,
possibilities that if Mikael has already made a connection and is a trusted advisor in
Mhm.
navigating this complicated system, it feels like it would be easier for somebody to stay with him than to have to jump to the.
tell their
telephone.
story all over again.
And I'd rather just try to support this and see if we have a lot of need, then we may have to adjust our budget. But right now, it feels like we've got enough money to cover what we have seen historically,
Mhm.
and I prefer to keep it streamlined.
Clean it, keep it clean. That's a good point. And as you made also, Michaela, there's a good ROI here for the veteran and the community. So thank you. Okay,
With
disregard that suggestion.
I don't know if Mike's suggestion of changing the scope of the emergency funds to PMO is something that we need to wait until budget cycle to do, which is
I think we
coming
could
up.
do it right now if you were interested in doing so.
I would like to.
Sure. Do we have to
You
write a
can give staff
resolution?
Direction on that, we will amend that. It's not a statutory prohibition, nor is it's just an internal
Let's get this done.
designation. So,
Get it done. I like that
Okay,
idea.
perfect.
Yeah, okay.
So we would like to give staff direction to include private medical opinions as a potential emergency veterans fund option.
Mhm.
And we will start that process. Can we do this retroactively in order to cover?
Well, that was for a URA veteran, and I would assume that URA is going to be doing something similar.
Okay,
We have a meeting next week with URA leadership, and I will be presenting the same thing to them.
Brilliant. And if you tell them that
Tell
Steve
them we
Miguel
did.
has done so, hopefully, and we're urging them to join us
Yes,
in this. We'd appreciate it.
Change out that form and get it sent to you.
thank you so much. Thank you, commissioners. Outside of the numbers, I do want to share with you a couple, a positive and a negative narrative that's came across my desk. I did meet a veteran at the gas station. He's a San Miguel County veteran from the Vietnam War. Vietnam War was 50 years ago. So in the article, they mentioned that my position is similar to hunting ghosts, and I think that's an appropriate way that many people perhaps go through traumatic events. They don't speak to anybody, but they have the PTSD and the nightmares after every night, and it's the spouses that come up to them. It's like, you should go see someone, you should go see someone, you should go see. And this article that came out had a story of a veteran that we had at Sherbino, and he was describing his situation with the journalist in front of it. And HIPAA prohibits me from divulging all these statements that come across my desk. These are private statements that go through a medical route, and they can never be for the public. I wanted to ask your opinion if I could approach some of these veterans and say, this is a pertinent and need to has benefit to the public knowledge. Can we use your statement and bring it to perhaps the newspaper? Maybe once a year do this, and that way I can do a little bit of advertisement marketing that the services are here. Many times veterans will not do anything unless another veteran says, I have a need, I need some help. And those are verboten words that we should never say in the military circles, but another veteran says, I need some help. I wanted to ask you, is that something that perhaps we can do?
I think that's a legal question, maybe.
I would say if the individual is willing to have their story shared, whether they're identified or not, I think if they consent to that, then that's something that you could certainly ask them. They have all the right to say no, thank you. But if they consent to having their story shared publicly, then that's something that you would be able to
Yeah,
do.
need to get a signature,
I would strongly urge you to get something in
Mhm.
writing or, you know, more than a verbal.
okay, right,
Just
Yeah.
in case, but sometimes people have memory issues or whatever.
Good
Don't
idea.
want it to come back that. They feel we coerce them or anything like that.
And I would suggest too, making the distinction of whether they would or would not consent to having their name used.
right. Personal information.
Yeah, because you can tell the story without their name or with their name, and yeah. I think that's a really creative way of kind of building your service base. But again, yes, and I think it's very thoughtful of you to consider whether it's appropriate and legal, yeah.
And legal. On the positive side, with this veteran, and I want to share this with you, he was part of the Vietnam Navy. He was in an incident where they were shooting shore bombardment so much that the barrel got cherry hot. And the next round cooked off, meaning that it exploded inside the turret, killing all 4 members of service members inside. It was his job to go inside and clean up the mess. He hasn't spoken to anybody about this, and he approached me at the gas station and said, yes, I need to talk to someone about this. So that's one story of courage. Also want to point out a story of cowardice. This morning I received a statement from a female captain. She went through MST, military sexual trauma. She had the unfortunate event of going through this trauma, and she had to unfortunately detail the whole event. She was upset and sent me a letter this morning. She finished it out, but also on the female side, even though 10% of the service members are female, they also serve in a way that this should be, used in a delicate manner, and I was able to help her out. So we're gonna do that thing this morning. But also I want to share like the breadth of what these service members are sometimes carrying. 50 to 20 years, and I sometimes find that my job is to make sure that their voices are heard at the VA level and their claims are made available to them. So that is the end of my report.
Mikhail, thank you for the work that you're doing. And the numbers that you've handed us to start your presentation are incredible. And I hope that we continue to climb up that ladder, like you said. Well done.
Thank you.
I have two questions for you. Have you heard of collateral trauma, and are you getting the support that you need? That's kind of a personal question, but just want to put it there on your radar.
I see what you mean.
We can talk about that afterwards.
Sure.
And then another question is, how are things at the VA? We had talked last time about concerns about layoffs, and I think they had already happened. But then I've been hearing in the news, perhaps they've been rehiring. What do you find in terms of responsiveness up there to your claims and also just service to the veterans?
I try to avoid the news, but it is part of the job to listen to it and see what is true or not. The last time I heard, the VA secretary was on a podcast saying that they decreased 90,000 layoffs to 30,000 layoffs by the end of September. That's good news and bad news. They're still laying off probably 5% of the workforce, but 30,000 is the last number I received.
And
that's
have
gonna
you-
happen by next month.
So have you noticed any change in service levels yet?
I have noticed a decrease in the wait time or increase in the wait times of my claims.
Yeah. Okay, keep us posted on that, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last thing I just want to point out, that additional $125,000 that Mikhail was able to receive for veterans that are shown this year is in perpetuity.
Yeah.
And we sometimes think about, it's awesome that these folks are like getting compensated for the impacts that they've endured while serving. But there's also a really positive, if we think about where a lot of our veterans are, they're in areas of our county that are not as thriving financially. So that has a recirculation factor and a positive impact on that community. It's more than just the veteran and their family. It's actually helping the local economies in San Miguel County. So kudos, Kyle, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, sir.
Agreed. Thank you so much. All righty. Don't see Art online, but I do see Maria Stark here. So just as a reminder, we're hopping back to item 7A, discussion regarding Maria Stark's replacement as the Intergovernmental Indigenous Speaker Working Group Leader. And this is a proposal by Art Goodtimes, who I believe had initiated this position and has held it for some time and is ready to pass the torch to Maria. So Maria, why don't you fill us in a little bit on all that?
Sure. Good morning, commissioners. Yes, Art asked me to take his place a couple weeks ago. And I thought that was a wonderful idea because I'm always interested in bringing people together and adding to, I guess, democratic efforts to, you know, be more inclusive of certainly of the indigenous peoples that this was their land, and he's done some great work to begin those relationships, and I'm happy to carry the torch.
That's terrific. And what do you see as your sort of first step?
Well, the first thing is really, from what I hear from Art, there's like a tiny budget of $2,000 from the town of Telluride every year. And with that money, he brings leaders from the different tribes to some of the there's 4 intergovernmental meetings, and he brings 2 or 3 people to, you know, 2 or 3 of those meetings. And so it's partly just arranging for those speakers to come. And I have my list of people that he's suggested for this coming year. And I guess sometimes they'll come by Zoom and sometimes they'll come in person. And when they come in person, then there's just the administrivia of lodging and transport, etc. And so, but I think after that, you know, I can explore whether there's other funding available from places like the county and the Telluride Foundation or other places, and then we might be able to reinvigorate things like a celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day, maybe an expansion of the Free Ski Day. Do you know about that?
I do,
Okay.
but not everybody may, so.
So once a year, the Telski provides free passes to Indigenous folks, and so that there's some costs related to lodging and transport to get people to take advantage of that. And I think at this point, it's not a huge thing, so it would be nice if we could expand that. And then another possibility, which would take a little doing, is possibly an annual San Miguel County Summit, maybe a half-day summit or something. But there'd be a lot of exploring to see how, you know, what the level of interest is from all parties.
Great.
Just to note, the county contributes $4,000 for the Ute Ski Day, for the lodging and all the
Okay.
and other things, rentals or tickets if they're not covered by the ski area. We also provide, and I gotta remind myself in our budget, but we have $4,000 additional for our Ute reconciliation that is a standing line item in our budget.
And is that typically used, you know?
Yes, that's used for, want to bring folks together for the gatherings or the summits, or paying for speakers to come and putting them up while they're here.
Oh, great, okay. Your budget just tripled, Maria.
It sounds like it.
Ryan, maybe we could exchange emails before you go, so I can give you that portion of the budget and
That'd be
we can chat a little bit about
I'll
how
do
to
that.
get that
Great.
access to it. Right.
One other thing, when Chair Hart of the Mountain Ute was here within the last maybe 8 or 9 months, I offered to organize a visit from our end to his community. And in particular, I felt like the interest was in, I mean, generally just, you know, connecting with the community and other leaders there. In addition, I was personally curious about the charter school they have there, where they teach the Indigenous language to children. And anyway, with everything else going on unexpectedly from Washington, it hasn't been at the top of my list, but it's something that's in the back of my mind. And maybe we could work together on that, Maria. It would be going in the other direction.
Yeah,
Um,
and there was interest in that.
it seemed to be, yeah, it was months ago, I'm sorry to say, but, sometimes that's how long things take.
Sure.
So yeah, let's you and I chat about that. Yeah. Lance, anything?
Maria, I'm delighted Art and I have been talking about trying to fill his shoes for some time, and you appeared. And I know that Art was instrumental in asking, and that you were willing is just fabulous. Thank you so much for taking this forward.
Thank you.
Thank you from me as well. All right. It's official,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
And
Thanks so
then
much.
Mariah will be joining us, I believe, when we meet at the next intergovernmental meeting
Next week.
next week
Yeah.
on the 11th of August.
Ah. I want to make sure that is on my calendar. It is not. Do you know what time and where that is? Yeah, and you know what? I don't think I'm gonna make it, unfortunately. Okay,
Represent.
thanks. And Commissioner Gleason will be back then as well, I think. Darn it. Okay. Okay, maybe that'll be recorded. I'd ask. All right, we are now at item 9A, planning matters. We are a couple minutes, actually about 7 minutes early. Kay, do you know if everybody is present that wants to be, or do you think we should just wait? Maybe we should wait till 10:05.
Yeah,
Let's do that in case any other members of the public want to come.
yeah, it is a specific time.
Time, exactly. And is it going to be a public hearing or,
It's not a public hearing, it's an appeal hearing.
and is it typical for us to take public comment during that time?
No,
No, no public comment. Okay.
this is like court.
Okay, okay.
Quasi judicial.
Quasi judicial. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. But obviously the parties involved will be able to
Yes.
engage. All right. We could pop on to manager matters. Mike, do you want to do that?
Happily.
We've got about 6 minutes.
Okay, I'll speak slowly.
This is-
I know Derek can fill in where I misstep or what I forget. Yeah, this past week, met with T-Mobile again and with Sean Krenza and went through their products to understand how we might be able to switch over and our county cell phones from AT&T FirstNet. T-Mobile offers a very similar FirstNet type product. The big advantage of FirstNet is that it prioritizes first responder and or other governmental traffic who may be involved in emergency response when there is competition within the bandwidths. So when there is a bunch of calls, such as during a festival or something, it prioritizes FirstNet over FirstNet prioritizes our traffic and our ability to communicate over general users. Not only does T-Mobile offer that, but they offer it in multiple different bandwidths, and then they also have a Starlink backup built into the phones that you can get. So if you're out of a cell service area, it connects automatically to Starlink satellites to allow talk, or currently it's text to 911 and text to text. They're launching a few more satellites this year that will also allow talking. So we're excited. We have 2 phones that we've just received, as well as a Wi-Fi hotspot to test.
Fantastic.
That's the next phase, as we wanted to test them in different areas, because they do show that we have full coverage through the Norwood Canyon and up Highway 62, up and over Dallas Divide. Knowing that we have numerous county employees that have county issued cell phone and are commuting from those areas, as well as Rico, to be able to have them in communication, or such as yesterday when a wildfire was spotted near Rico, for them to be able to report that in quickly would be a big benefit. Cost wise, we're getting quotes, but it looks like our costs will be very similar to what we currently pay. And so we'll come forward after we test those phones and equipment with potential recommendation of moving that contract over. Parks and Open Space staff, working with our county employee tenants, performed radon mitigation in 2 of the county-owned home units where they were experiencing high radon levels well above the EPA thresholds, and so those were completed. And I'm happy that's something whenever we learn about it, we want to act on extremely fast because radon is irreversible.
How did we become aware of the issue?
The employees themselves requested test packets, and then I know at least one of the units had a follow-up with our county-owned radon monitoring equipment. And that is available for the public to check out and use through the Public Health Department. It's one of the offerings of environmental health. And it is a professional commercial grade radon tester. So it's the same equipment that a professional radon mitigation company, you would pay for them to come to your home and do. You can get that equipment and use it for free from the county. And then the mitigation of those homes, it's depends on where, is it a ground floor? Does it have a crawl space? So how they actually address it is a little bit different in each scenario. But I know I had it done in my own home, not through the county, but I did use the county's equipment and learned that my own home was 8 times the threshold level, and learning that 2 of the previous occupants of my home had had lung cancer or died of lung cancer, even though neither one smoked. Radon is usually the highest contributing factor in those scenarios. So I just want to kind of say thanks to Parks and Open Space for jumping on that. Thanks to the employees for raising that concern, but also just as a reminder to the general public, we live in a very high radon occurrence area. And please do take advantage of the free resources through San Miguel County Environmental Health to protect yourself and your family. Yesterday, I participated in the El Pomar quarterly meeting. I'm on the San Juan Council. I had reached out to several nonprofits that are in the focus area of our council, which is youth programming, as well as mental health. And we all voted to provide $15,000 a year for the next 5 years, or for 3 years, sorry, to the youth hangout space in Telluride. I shared the report and the data that they had given to us. And so that will be an assistance for the continued operation of that space, at least for the next 3 years. Also, after I had met with Leila and Stephanie at the Norwood Food Bank and understanding that they're going to be kicked out of their space in January, they want to move to a new permanent location. And although I said, I don't know if we can make it permanent, we've been looking at areas in and around the Oxen building in Norwood of where we might be able to host a mobile and or a construction trailer or semi-permanent type of structure to operate the food bank out of in that location. And spoke to El Pomar about that, and they were very interested in providing capital funding to potentially purchase a building and when I say building, I'm talking like a construction trailer with freezers and things like that type building, not building a new permanent structure there. That is going to be a little bit later, that they meet in September about that. So I'll be working with the Norwood Food Bank on structuring their application.
And when is the deadline for the pantry to leave the school? January,
But they
okay.
said that they don't want to be moving
In the winter,
So
yeah.
we're going to be trying to do this in September and October if possible. And so I may come forth to you for a request to use the vacant lot that we own adjacent to the Glockson building. The long-term plan is, we know that the Glockson building is not structurally great, and we are going to eventually have to tear down and rebuild that building. So the thought was always to just reconstruct it on the vacant lot adjacent to it, so that we don't have to have a time crunch of no place for all of those offices to operate out of. But that would still be able to accommodate this building. I've been telling them that if, you know, my recommendation, if that is the preferred location, after we're investigating some other structures that we might be able to renovate and use for this purpose. But that we would look at something like a 5-year lease term so that they had some operating stability, but it wasn't forever.
A 5-year lease term if with this construction trailer.
Correct.
Okay. Mhm.
Right.
Thank you for working on that, Mike.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. As I recall, you were the one who suggested the school site last
And-
time they were
and
homeless.
Unfortunately, they had a 3-year lease there, but they're being asked to leave after only a year and a half.
Yeah, I
So,
understand.
And I think it's also a question of what happens with the Norwood bond issue related to the school. There could be the potential of them being able to use a renovated or an existing space in the school longer term, but we want to make sure that we have all plans in place and potential funding if we learn in November that that is a no-go.
Thank you.
Jared and I met with Mountain Village staff about their phase 1 of development on their Ilium affordable housing. And I'll let him speak more to that if he wants to. But there's some questions around the intersection and traffic that we're still working with CDOT and Road and Bridge and planning to fully understand whether or not the existing intersection could handle the capacity that they're proposing for a first phase of development.
Okay. I'm looking at the clock now and maybe we'll
Okay.
pause manager matters.
Come back to that.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you for filling in a few minutes for us. I had a feeling you had plenty to share. All right, so it is now 10:08 and we will address item 9A, planning matters, consideration of an appeal of the employee housing impact mitigation fee for 28 Village Lane in Placerville. And so just to kind of set the lay of the land, the way this kind of quasi judicial hearing and decision is made, Kay, as the planning director or representative of the department, would normally present the information to the board, and then we would have an opportunity for the appellant to speak, and then there would be discussion among the commissioners and questions and so forth, and staff as necessary. This is, as I was just told, not a public hearing, so we will not be taking public comment at this time. All right, does that make sense to everybody, the Lamb family? That approach?
I had a few things that I was hoping to at least discuss before my potentially what I'd like to say to you all, and one thing that I was hoping now that you.
Hang on one second, Jesse, because you're sitting back there and no one on Zoom can hear you. You're not at the microphone. So I don't know if you heard or understood what I said. So Kay would make her presentation, we would ask her questions and so forth, and then you would have an opportunity to speak as well, and we could have questions and discussion. Did you want something different from that?
I was hoping to ask the request of the county commissioners because of the implications of this on the greater whole, to allow I've garnered some small support in favor, or at least discuss this, that they be allotted at least the 3-minute time constraint that you typically will allow people to speak in regards to this matter. If that's at all an acceptable request, I'm just in hopes that not only is my case going to be presented in favor for us, but as a continued community discussion on the greater conversation of this fee and the impacts it may or may not have. So my request is that you allow at least 2 of the representatives that have come here today the time to speak in regards to it, if they so choose.
Sure. I understand your request, and I think it's really a legal matter as opposed to a procedural matter. So I'm looking to staff for that, just in terms of if we do it this time, does that mean we do it every time? Maura, do you have opinion on this?
So this is only my second one of these, but my understanding is that typically we don't take public comment on these types of appeals that are specific to an individual property, where it's not, it's not like a land use application. You certainly can take comment if you choose to.
Yeah. Okay, it's a little bit tricky here because I think that our job as commissioners here is to interpret the land use code and make a decision based on that as opposed to a decision based on impact to the community. That would probably be a discussion we would have if we were addressing I don't think it's statute, the code itself, but I hear some other
I was
comments.
just,
Siri has an opinion as well.
Siri would like to weigh in on this one.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I think, you know, obviously, if somebody is an owner, a dual owner or an agent of the property, that they would be able to speak in this type of situation. They would not be acting as a member of the general public.
Right.
So if there are other owners of the property or people that have legal property interests with the subject property, they would be able to speak.
Of course, that makes perfect sense. I guess and I'd love to hear what you think, Commissioner Waring, but I'm thinking about as a quasi judicial matter, it's sort of like being in court and typically members of the public aren't invited to do that and it to speak unless they're, you know, called as a legal witness in that procedure. And again, my concern would be that somehow our decision would be viewed as tainted because we didn't follow the typical process. That said, I understand your point, Jesse, about this being a community concern because there are inevitably other people in your situation. So I'm a little torn here.
I understand, and I kind of see where you're getting at with everything, and
Yeah.
I respect your decision. I
Okay.
still would like to obviously hear what Ms. Simonson has to say, and then in return, both myself and my wife.
Oh,
who are
definitely.
Direct representatives
Right.
within this matter, would like to
Of
at least say
course.
something.
Of
So,
course.
That being said, I'll go ahead and take my seat, and if these guys choose to stick around to hear what has to be
Sure.
said, I respect that, but.
Well, let me just see what Commissioner Waring thinks. He's been chair multiple times, and so he may have been through something like this and have an opinion for me. Would you like to stick to
I'll
the
give
typical?
you a split the baby concept that might work. Jesse, I appreciate you hearing the protocol concern that we're trying to really stay focused on just you. Anybody that is part of your property or part of your family, that makes perfect sense. What I offer is, I know that Ben Priest wrote a letter in support of
Beautiful.
reconsidering this.
But
And I read that. I'm happy to take more input. And I know that James Guest is in the back corner there. And after the meeting, if James is still around or if he wants to call me, I'm happy to talk more with you. And I think that both of us will have a better understanding after this conversation. So instead of including public comment in this particular hearing or appeal, let's just agree that both Ann and I are happy to continue the conversation after the meeting.
absolutely, I respect your decision.
And I also read Ben's
And you
note.
have one from Ben Tugger as well.
Okay.
Mr. Hazen, there are multiple that you guys have received.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting. I don't think they've come through to us yet.
They probably came late. I will
Okay.
wholeheartedly admit to the fact that I'm not overly familiar with how these situations are meant to be.
This is not a
Understood.
And the
situation you
schedule
want to be good at.
alongside them, so,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
in that regard, I apologize
No
if
problem.
anything has come in any late, but it is of that much more importance that I think it is something that needs to be presented to you.
Thank you.
I think that I hope you hear that we're receptive to continuing the conversation, but that for today, we really want to focus on the matter at hand.
That sounds great.
That sounds good. Thank you, Lance.
Why don't you stay, Jesse?
Yeah, you're welcome to stay there.
Unless you want to sit back with your young one.
And then just one thing I wanted to clarify, Lance, you had said family members or people with an interest in the property. I think we should limit it to people with a financial interest in the property.
Yes.
So in case there are family members who don't fit that criteria. All right, staff, are you comfortable with that?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks for everybody as we worked that through. Okay, take it away.
Okay, so this is the appeal hearing for the employee housing mitigation fee at 28 Village Lane. That property is located in the Applebaugh area, near Placerville. The basis of the appeal, as filed by Jesse and Leah Lamb, is based on the contention that there are negative effects in assessing the fee on people who live and work in the community. They stated that they were not aware of the fee prior to preparing and submitting the plans, And they believe that the use of the words presumed and strong tendency in section 5-1303G 11E exemptions to the employee housing mitigation fee and mitigation are a gross oversimplification. And the full appeal narrative is in your packet. And there's more to it, but that's kind of the gist of it. By way of background, the employee housing impact fee and mitigation requirements were adopted in 2007. They were updated in 2022 with some further refinements in 2023. This development permit application for the new home was submitted on March 4th of this year. The appeal was filed on July 2nd, and then the building permit was actually issued for the 2,225 square foot home on July 9th. They did pay the employee housing impact fee of $19,159 at that time. Regarding applicability of the fee, the land use code section 5-1303 G outlines, that's the section where all of the fee information lives, and the mitigation information. The fee applies to the new construction of a building for which a building permit is required. So single family home in this case. And then under G11 exemptions, there are three of those that could apply in this case. Subsection A exempts deed restricted single family homes. So if one were to deed restrict a single family home or any type of dwelling unit, it's exempt from the fee. It exempts residential improvements less than 2,000 square feet. This home is proposed to be 2,225 square feet. And then there's the possibility for other exemptions and waivers when determined by the BOCC to be in the public interest due to special circumstances or unique situations where the development provides community benefits or where the value of such benefits meets or exceeds the mitigation that would otherwise be required. And then getting into more detail on the exemptions to the fee, specifically regarding single-family dwellings, 2,000 square feet or less of floor area. And that reads, the Board of County Commissioners finds that residential improvements 2,000 square feet or less are presumed to be occupied by local employees, and only residential improvements with a floor area of greater than 2,000 square feet should pay employee housing impact fees. This is based on the fact that residential improvements greater than 2,000 square feet of floor area have a strong tendency for non-resident occupancy, and the employee generation for non-resident occupied residential structures or second homes is significantly greater than that for resident occupied improvements, creating impacts beyond the county's ability to mitigate without a fee assessed for the development. This text is unchanged since 2007, except to increase the exempt floor area from 1,800 square feet to 2,000 square feet in 2023. And that was to match the maximum caretaker dwelling size, so that we didn't have that 200 square foot overlap. Under right to appeal, there's also an alternate calculations section. So 5-1303 G12, right to appeal, says that any person aggrieved by the decision of the planning office with respect to the administration of the employee housing impact fee under this code will have the right to appeal such decision to the Board of County Commissioners pursuant to section 1-1903. And that's what we're doing here today. And then it goes on to say, in addition, a developer may present alternative calculations of employee generation to the Board of County Commissioners for review and consideration. Calculation of the fee, it's determined by the employees generated for the construction and maintenance of the property, multiplied times 400 square feet per employee, times the mitigation rate, which is a sliding scale that goes from beginning at 2,001 square feet is 18%, and then goes all the way up to 90% beginning at 5,000 square feet and above for this property. And then there's the market affordability gap fee. So number of employees generated for this is 0.388. We did not receive an alternative calculation of employee generation in this case, so we couldn't apply that. So at 400 square feet per employee generated, that's a requirement for 155.36 square feet of employee housing. And then you multiply that times 23.4% times 527 square feet. And that's how you get to the $19,159 fee. Discussion points here. There are 3 exemptions, 2,000 square feet or less. There is the option to deed restrict the home. And then there's also the potential of finding special circumstances or a unique situation that provides community benefits. And then, as I noted, the appellant has not submitted an alternative calculation of employee generation. The employee housing impact fee and mitigation has been in the land use code since 2007, including the exemption for deed restricted units and for floor area under the specified threshold. The fee is applied uniformly and consistently to all new residential construction in the R1 school district. And then, recall that there was very significant public outreach and discussion occurring in 2022 and 2023 regarding the fee, and then all this information is on the county website. In terms of your action, you should be looking at how the application fee complies with the code and within the parameters given within the code. You may uphold the planning director's decision, which is to assess the fees as written in the code, or you may grant an exemption or waiver of the fee pursuant to Land Use Code Section 5-1305G, Roman numeral 11F, other exemptions. Should the BOCC choose to grant an exemption or waiver, findings should be made describing how a waiver for the proposed project would be in the public interest due to special circumstances or unique situations where the development provides community benefits, or where such benefit would exceed the mitigation requirement. The BOCC should also describe how the board's action is necessary to remedy the administrative action. And I would add in here that also, should you decide to grant an exemption or waiver, carefully consider the precedent that is created for what that might mean for other similarly situated properties and owners. Alternatively, the developer may submit an alternative employee generation calculation for review by the planning department, so the 0.38 employees, if they could demonstrate that the employees is less than that, upon your direction, it could be applied retroactively. And I would caution that, that calculation would need to stand up against the employee generation calculations in that study that we have. And then your final decision should be in the form of a resolution. And in your motion, you should provide direction to staff to prepare a resolution for adoption at a future meeting pursuant to whatever decision that you make here with the necessary findings. And that is it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
A question.
Please.
Chairman Brad. Kay, in the process of receiving a development permit, how is the applicant informed of this potential impact fee? Is there a moment in the process where that is illustrated, or is that something that they research on their own?
Excuse me. There's not necessarily a single moment. We meet with people all the time who will ask us what all do we need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And we're happy to offer that up. Applications are submitted through our SmartGov portal.
Mm-hmm.
And then on our website, we have a number of FAQs
Mhm.
And the employee housing mitigation fee is one of them. So the information is there. The key point where they see, an applicant sees the fee, as we're doing our check and we verified the floor area, we fill out the calculation spreadsheet and then we populate the fee field. And that's when they see that.
So you need
so-
to have a set of firm plans in order to do that calculation. It's
Yes,
something
Yeah.
that you can't pin a number on and say for certain that anybody's going to have to pay any particular amount until you've had a chance to look at the plans.
but the information's right there on, the main planning webpage. There's, an entire, we've got the ribbons on our page and there's one that's entirely, affordable housing mitigation. So
I
that
shared it
information's
yesterday
there.
with the local broker who had some questions, and I found it pretty easy
Yeah.
to find once I knew that that was the place I was hunting. So thank you.
But for development permits, we don't have it's not like our land use application, their special use permits and such, which have a pre-application meeting.
Mhm.
Development permits are simply submitted through the portal.
Understood. Thank you.
And is there anything in the application process on the portal that alerts somebody to this fee? Or does it just kind of spit out at the end after the application is made and reviewed?
Yeah, because there are a number of different fees and such that can go into a permit. There's no one single notification
Right,
of everything that might be.
okay.
We combine all of our permits into a one-step process. So, we've got OWTS and road and bridge and driveways and everything going in
Yeah.
at once.
Okay, so I mean, I think there are two separate issues here that I've thought through so far, and we'll hear from Jesse, and there may be many more. But the one is the awareness of the fee. And I understand this is something that's been in place since 2007 and that it's been in the news. I also do see that there's information about it on the website, but I think it could be better. So I don't think that's necessarily a reason to, change the fee, but I do think we can improve on that. And I have some ideas, having looked it over pretty thoroughly. But then the other issue is really whether the fee itself is fair. And that's what I think, it certainly in my mind seems to follow the code, but the other issues that have been brought up in Jesse's letter and so forth. So anyway, that's my initial thinking, and I'm happy to hear now from Jesse. Maybe you want to address some of those points.
So, yeah, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Jesse Lamb. I am the appellant in question in regards to this matter. A short background on what we're doing. Obviously, the planning director just outlined more or less what we're doing, but my wife Leah and myself are in attempts to build a home for our family at 28 Village Lane. In an attempt to do so, we are in a unique circumstance that I think warrants attention in the fact that because of my knowledge, skill set, tools, resources, etc., I am one of the few who actually has the opportunity to attempt to undertake building their own home in the most affordable nature that you can to this day and age. It quite arguably is one of the only calculable methods to attempt to build in any affordable nature, just in the climate that we have in our region, between contractor prices, building prices, etc., fees, etc., etc. So I just wanted to make it clear that in this particular circumstance, we're kind of working on something that's potentially unique to this fee up until this point in time. And I'd like to take the time to discuss a few of the different points that I have in regards to this matter. I assure you I won't take up too much of your time, but what I have to say, I do believe not only substantiates our grounds for appeal, but as a community member, I think holds significant value into the continued discussion, revision, and just considerations that all need to be taken into account when implementing a fee such as this and how it may or may not inadvertently affect certain demographics of people, etc. What I have outlined and what I would like to discuss specifically is more or less in response to the planning director's reply to our appeal, which is within their packet. I take it you have read my letter and the planning director's information and response to appeal. Specifically, the various different avenues for exemption that Ms. Evanson has just outlined. There are comments that I would like to make on them in particular, but I'll start with saying that in the very first paragraph of the planning director's response to our appeal is that one of the considerations that needs to be taken into account for the Board of County Commissioners in order to attempt to waive or consider any sort of exemption to this matter is community benefits in what they may or may not be. And I would like to argue that in our circumstance, it's quite clear that the community benefits here are allowing the community and the county commissioners to set a precedent to where they are investing in helping retain and keep residents that have been here their entire lives. Full-time working members of the community who live here on a full-time basis. I have grown up in Telluride. I have the luxury of being able to say that. We know that it is extraordinarily difficult to not only help keep our population of community residents within the area and have them work here. This is an important community benefit that I think pertains to our case in particular. We are the employees in question in regards to that fee, and we are going to continue to be acting and thriving members of the community. In addition to this, you may note that I have attended this hearing with my family. My 2-year-old daughter and my wife and I are expecting our second child here within the next month. So I'd like to argue that in considering our appeal, the Board of County Commissioners is likewise taking the steps towards actively garnering in a future generation of community residents that love, share all the same values that the majority of us that have been here for as long as we have. And that in and of itself is a community benefit that everybody should consider astronomical in our situation, in an area that people have continued to just more or less get pushed out. You know, we all love and want to stay here. I want to offer my children the same opportunities I had. And we're trying to do that by building our own house for them. So again, I'll try to keep things somewhat brief here. That's just my comments on what our community benefit is in attempting to waive the fee. The 2,000 square foot threshold that is in place for the exemption to the fee, I believe needs significant care, attention, and potential revision. Specifically as it pertains to the greater community, we are aware that within the very localized area of the Telluride region, more often than not, residents are more or less just, they don't have any other choice to attempt to try to buy or build at that 2,000 square foot limit. But if you look at the Down Valley regions or the greater county as a whole, I think that this particular exemption square footage needs to have significantly more data in order to justify it. If you look at members of the Down Valley community, I would like to argue without listing any specific sort of data, but the majority of the residents that I would say that live Down Valley are all full-time living residents within the community and also live and work within San Miguel County. And I would also argue that a large majority of the homes that are in the region are roughly that 2,000 to 2,200 square feet is a, you know, very comfortable range for families that live Down Valley. That all needs to just be taken into consideration. And if the county is going to impose a fee that has such drastic implications as it pertains to anybody in their future building development, you have to put in the work to be able to justify those numbers, is my own personal opinion. I take it or leave it. In regards to the unawareness of the fee, you may recollect in my letter that that was more or less one of our strong arguing points. And I'm glad that already the county commissioners have asked these questions to the planning director, because this I do see as a significant issue that needs revision. Like I said, we engaged in designing our home on our particular lot August or September of 2023. And I know that you can say that the affordable housing mitigation fee to a certain extent has been in place since 2007, but I think that we can all agree that it hasn't necessarily had any sort of public limelight until the revisions in 2022 and subsequently in 2023. So these are relatively recent revisions by the commissioners and the planning department. My parents also live down in the Placer Valley Village subdivision. And I feel very fortunate that, like I said, I'm building my own home. I utilize my same services and resources to help them through a massive remodel on their own home. Their building permit was before the 2022 revisions, so they were in no way subject to the affordable housing mitigation fee. So in my mind, I've been working on this massive project down there for them, trying to get them in their home, all the while seemingly entirely unaware of any such deterrent as this fee into one's process of attempting to obtain a building permit. Again, these are all points that you can blame it on my naivety or not enough research, but let's be clear, you know, I mean, we in no way would have thought that there was something along these lines that would have such significant implications and be a driving factor into what any given property owner can do on their own home. We're trying to build our own home for our family. And so in our minds, we're just kind of moving forward with that. We began designing the home, like I say, in approximately August or September of 2023 is when I met with my good friend Adam D'Alva, who also helped us as our architect in order to get the appropriate construction documents to obtain our building permit. And I had designed the home myself, more or less, and I structured it in a manner as to utilize a footprint that was the best possible footprint I could work with many different factors within our lot. We have a handful of different variables that needed to be taken into consideration. There is a big drainage that runs through our property that we had to obviously keep mindful of, knowing all the issues with runoff, et cetera, down valley. Fitting in our on-site wastewater treatment system and leach field is obviously an enormous space constraint that we had to do. But all along, I designed the footprint of the home in a manner as to take advantage of the space that we had to try to get us more or less as much home as we could. And so we had worked with this footprint that worked with what we're doing. There was a cliff that I was working around. We had to be mindful of that with the way that the foundation was oriented. But what I'm getting with that is that we had designed this home unknowing that we potentially would be subject to this fee. And there's something in the packet that the planning department has put that we did not reach out in regards to the fee until this year, May email correspondence. And I'd like to make a note that that's actually not true. It was about a year ago to the date. I know specifically because I was in Denver awaiting my first 2 major hip surgeries, aside the point, and I was speaking with another local resident who has spent their entire lives here, who is currently building their home in Placerville as well, Fisher Hayes. And it was at this time a year ago that I finally became fully aware of this fee and exactly what it meant to us and what we would be subject to pay. and how it was only a continuation into potentially making our prospect of building our own home unaffordable. And to segue into an additional contradiction into the response from the planning department, they argue that we have not undertaken any efforts to attempt to accommodate our building in a manner as to try to meet some of these exemption regulations, which again is simply not true. So last year, we had designed the whole home off of footprint, like I said. And I had already engaged with my structural engineers and my architects, and we had a comprehensive set of plans, structural engineered plans. And at that time, our home actually, we had an additional 400, 500 some odd square feet on it. Like I say, we were kind of just picking away at design, continuing to look at, okay, maybe we can build this home. We got to the point where we realized this fee was going to make it unaffordable, especially at that square footage that we were at. And it was my decision ultimately, because affordability is one of our utmost concerns, that we would undergo a massive revision on our home. But me being in the building industry and understanding what it takes in order to make alterations and changes to completed drawings, I engaged with my structural engineers in a manner into attempt to alleviate the amount of work that it would require for them to make these alterations, which more or less kept our footprint in place, lopping off top of the house. And we were working towards getting towards that exemption rate. This was costly and time expense. I mean, it was a $3,000 change order in order to undergo these revisions with the structural engineers. On top of that, it was at least another $2,000 worth of architectural redesign fees. So for the county to argue that we have made no attempts to try to work towards our exemption is simply incorrect. And I would argue that we are trying very diligently. And so that revision got us to the point where we were within that 2,225 square foot that we ultimately submitted as permit. So we had gone through this entire process, and we submitted and everything. And excuse me if I just look at these real quick to make sure I'm staying on track with them. One more small tidbit on the note of attempting to try to get closer to the 2,000 square foot realm is that I currently have all of my foundation lines laid out, which I did myself with my dad. We're in the trenches laying out the foundation. And because of the site and some of the various different aspects I'm looking at, and knowing that reducing the square footage only helps us in the fact of the matter of this fee and just a total price per square foot building cost. I have made some, alterations that are not necessarily subject to re-engineering fees, et cetera, small ones. We will be roughly underneath that 2,200 square foot living, that would be our living space area, will be under 2,200 square feet. So what I'm getting with that lengthy outline of everything is that the 2,000 square foot threshold is not adequate, one. And two is that we actually have been working to try to get ourselves closer to that without undertaking too much more significant time and expense with redesign fees, etc. I'll move on because I know I could drive on forever. But in addition to one of the 2,000 square foot exemption, there's obviously the deed restricted housing exemption, which I'm also not going to spend too much time on this because I know that you all have worked tirelessly, and it's an exhausting situation, and it's not anything that is at all simply fixed. And I will respectfully appreciate the fact that deed restricted housing, of course, does have its advantages for a large majority of people who that is one of their few options. I find myself in the unique circumstance to where I'm potentially trying to build my own home. But we cannot sit here and say that deed restriction is any form of saving grace to our affordable housing crisis. And we, on a personal level, choose not to deed restrict our house simply on the fact of the matter that it's not right to have to continuously be monitored by a governing body on the circumstances of your own home. I know one circumstance where a deed restricted homeowner who built their own home, they were remodeling their home and not having, you know, the hours, because they were remodeling their own home, required by the San Miguel Regional Housing Authority to qualify for their own home. Somebody who built their own home in a deed restricted setting was they were unqualified to live there due to some loophole. There are too many holes within it, and we just choose as private homeowners to attempt to not have to associate with any sorts of governing body that would oversee our own homeownership. I won't get too much more involved with that, but anyways, I, have undergone this entire process of appeal, and this has been lengthy. It's been a difficult process to overcome. One more item I wanted to touch on was in the regards to the unawareness of the fee. You, Mr. Waring, had expressed that you did in fact find the information necessary on the planning department's webpage through a hyperlink. Obviously, I followed the same one, but it is inadequate for the county, both planning department and the building department, their homepages. It needs to be explicitly clear to anybody who would ever consider applying for a building or development permit in this county to be fully aware of this. This fee has significant implications to anybody who would want to develop it. And I feel that I'm on the lower end of that spectrum. But ultimately, it's affecting us in a very negative way as well. $19,000 in the hands of the county in regards to what they need to continue to combat the difficult affordable housing situation in crisis is not really a lot of money. But $19,000 to those of us that are trying to build our own homes on the sweat of our own backs in an attempt to try to raise our families here and stay here and be active working members of the community, it's enormous. It is absolutely enormous. And it is something that we truly feel like we need to be able to consider these sorts of situations. I think that it has drastic implications, and it will only continue to harm the community in an inadvertent way. And so I'll close with saying that I would genuinely like to thank the Board of County Commissioners and the county and the planning department. I am ultimately aware that what you're left with and your jobs are extraordinarily hard, and you are in fact doing everything that you possibly can to try to tailor to the greater community and all its residents. I thank you for it. But I knew that this appeal was potentially an uphill battle for us. But not only am I trying to appeal to you in a manner as to help us try to fulfill our dreams, I'm attempting to try to continue the conversation, to refine, revise, and just attempt to take every possible consideration that we can into consideration when implementing such things that have such drastic effects, no matter how small or large. If you guys have to be able to encompass everybody, more or less, as county commissioners. So again, I would like to thank you for your time. That's more or less everything that I have to say. If you would allow it, I would like to have my wife read a letter that was written in favor of our support from our architect. I'm not entirely sure if this is one that he has submitted directly to the Board of County Commissioners. As you are aware, you have received multiple letters, just more or less as discussion points and in favor of us potentially finding some waiver or exemption from the fee, or at a bare minimum, more food for thought.
So thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm sitting here and looking at you guys, and I was in the exact same position. About to have a baby, our second baby, building a house down valley. It's a big job, and it's a big step in your life, and we're really happy that you're able to do that here, and you are exactly the kind of family we want to keep here. Any family that's contributing to our community, we hope can make it here, and we know how hard it is, so thank you.
And I'd like to just say one more, and thank you, I appreciate your sentiment. You know, I understand that you have to be overly conscious and aware of making any sort of precedent or setting grounds for anything that could open the door for future discussions such as this, and I can appreciate that, but at a minimum, I hope that our circumstance and bringing this situation to light to you just potentially can be that catalyst into us continuing to think very critically about the implications of this fee and how it may or may not affect people in a situation such as ours.
I understand. So Leah, your request is to read public comment provided by somebody else, but you do have a financial interest in this, so you're kind of, this is a little bit of a gray area relative to the decision we made earlier, and so, I
I understand. Well, this is the outside perspective coming in through me, so
yeah,
understood there.
that, anybody have a feeling on that? Any of the professionals in the room?
I would say we could take the letter and for your review and consideration, the way other letters have been submitted.
The thing is, though, we are making a decision today, right? So we wouldn't have an opportunity to read that letter.
Yeah, I guess I thought I understood what Lance was saying is, well, you would consider those as part of an ongoing
Oh, for sure.
conversation and not necessarily weighing on this particular
sure.
appeal.
Absolutely. We absolutely will. And Jesse, I just want you to know that, at a bare minimum, you are providing food for thought, and we can address that. Leah, why don't you do this? Why don't you, in your own words, share the information that was conveyed in that letter, as something that you'd like to communicate personally to the BOCC?
Well, thank you guys for listening to us today. I'm Leah, Jesse's wife. Well, we're thrilled to be building here. We're excited to have this opportunity and to plant some roots. He grew up here. I moved here when I was 19 years old, with my twin sister, and we've been working in Telluride, living in Telluride, coaching, just being a part of the community since we've gotten here in our teens. And I've been so grateful to live here, and I've lived everywhere. I've lived, 10 people in a house. We've owned our own house for a while, and that was wonderful. And moving forward, the idea of building our own house here is truly a dream come true. So extremely grateful for where we're at. I will say though, with this fee, we were a little blindsided just with all that we've had going. He's had surgeries, we've had kids, and anyone who's had a kid, everything's all new all at once. So just having these curveballs thrown at us that we weren't really prepared for has created more stress in the family, and just moving forward, some transparency on the website, and Kay has said that it's there, and people just need to learn where to look for it. So I don't know, maybe have it more as on a to-do list before building as an option. But anyways, I don't think we're the type of family that this is geared towards affecting in the first place. It would negatively affect us to take the fee on. And we'd really just appreciate reconsideration of it, because we want to stay in this community, and the $19,000 for our family would be a huge, success for us, where we would use the money just for our daily lives that we need to continue here. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind for us, and we appreciate you considering it all.
I was gonna ask Kate, is there anything that the Lambs have said that you would like to address?
Well, they noted that they will possibly be reducing the floor area further. And, as you will recall from our last appeal, that was the case as well. And documentation was submitted to us showing that there was a further reduction. So I think just last week, we finally processed that refund for the overpayment. So there is that avenue. And then regards to, the community benefit argument, by establishing the first 1,800 square feet, now 2,000 square feet, there's definitely a recognition that there's a benefit to keeping residents in the community, and, keeping them in their own homes. But as with any, when you're dealing with a land use code, at a certain point, you need to have a limit. You may recall from 2023, we had a lot of discussions as to what that limit should be. It definitely made sense to bring it up to 2,000 because it aligned with other parts of the code. But should it be more? And where do we stop? And so finally, we did settle on the 2,000 square feet. And there were a lot of letters to the editor, and there were a lot of newspaper articles and what have you. But in terms of any community benefit or public benefit, there always needs to be something that ensures that's protected. I haven't seen anything that could do that aside from the deed restriction. A deed restriction would protect that community benefit, as presented. There's nothing that, precludes them from selling the house. I mean, it's your dream. You want to live there, you want to raise your family. But things do change. And once you waive the fee, it might not be a local owner on the next time. And that's where you're getting into precedence. Not just for this property, but how we're going to be applying the land use code and moving forward for all properties. So that is pretty much all I had. I don't know if Maura, if you had anything to add.
No, I think you covered what I would have added, so.
Lance,
Jesse, would you humor me and trade me places? Can I come sit where you sit and you sit here for a second? If it's this. Northwest. All right, I've been dreading this one, Jesse, and it's for all the obvious reasons. My heart is with both of you, but I am not easily able to make a Lamb exception, because if I do, then I've suddenly put myself in the position where I'm going to have to define a local for everybody else. And you are the most obvious example of a local that's given. But if I say yes to you, someone's going to come and say, well, I didn't go to school here, but I have been living here for 10 years and I've done a lot of good deeds and I've been coaching kids and I've been volunteering and I'm feeling local. And all of a sudden I'm on this terrifying slippery slope. So unfortunately, while I totally agree with them that you guys are an asset to the community, I can't use that logic to make this decision. We talked a bit about the 2,000 square foot limit, and what I hear you saying is that back in 2022 and 2023, when we were having a lot of meetings about those numbers, I missed the mark by 225 square feet. We were trying to come up with a number. We didn't expect that it would be the perfect number, but we had to, as Kay said, come up with something. And 2000 did fit in with other parts of the land use code. Rationally, that made sense. We started at 18, we moved it, almost done. And we can readdress that if it turns out that 2,225 is the magic number, it's gonna work for you. But then someone's gonna come in at, 24, and we may have the same conversation, and we'll have to decide again, what is the right number? I'm not sure how to address that, but I'm willing to talk about it. But for today, as Ann said, we are expecting, and I think you're hoping that we'll come to some conclusion. And I offer that one thing in your presentation might be useful. And that is, you mentioned that you've got a remarkable and unique talent in being able to do much of the work on this project yourself. And it's possible that I would be persuaded that if you were to redraft a lower employee generation number than the 0.38 that is just kind of standard because of your unique skill set and the fact that you are doing so much of this work yourself, and you can show me that and explain that to me, that angle could be a way that we could find some common ground here, because then I'm working within the parameters that I have to within the land use code, but I'm also able to apply them to your unique circumstances. What do you say, Commish?
Well, I really appreciate you and this sentiment. You've known me my whole life.
So,
One thing I was gonna say, is the 225 number that we've come up with, and this is in the letter that I'm not sure has been emailed to you, but my architect and good friend Adam Dialbo submitted. That includes mechanical area, which is a point of contention in our own argument here as well. So 65 feet of mechanical space utilized or categorized by the county as heated living space seems inappropriate, to say the least. So you will continue to see that number decline, especially if you take into account mechanical space, which is in our garage as well. So that's just one more thing that I wanted to comment on. And in regards to employees generated, as you had just mentioned, I owe a debt of gratitude to Fisher Hazen to submit a letter to you, which pointed up a contradictory nature in this essence as well, in the fact that in the land use code, I believe it says employees generated for the process of construction, as well as employees generated for the operation and maintenance for any future home. This doesn't apply to us in this situation, and we in fact are the employees that are generated through the whole process of construction. And likewise, additionally, we are the employees generated through the operations and maintenance of our own residents.
I'm saying, we're saying the same thing. I'm asking you to come up with a different calculation number to illustrate the point that you're making.
And this
I was
is-
gonna make the same point, Lance. I'm glad you brought it up.
So I appreciate you saying those two things, and in addition to the mechanical not being an adequate means of categorization for living space. I mean, yes, it is a necessary part of the home required to have the home operate at its highest level, but in no way is it a living space.
This is a new twist in its technical interpretation that you and Kay may have been going back and forth about for some time, but let's keep the 65 just on the side and try to talk about the bigger picture. We're bickering over $19,000 and 225 square feet. You may be able to subtract 65 from that with some more time and discussion. I don't know. But I'm not going to be able to render that decision for now. That's going to be something that's between you and the planning department, perhaps the building department. And if we have to have a separate appeal for that one, let's worry about that. But I don't think we can stack that on top today.
I appreciate that, Lance.
Thanks,
And
Jesse.
likewise, thank you for your time and consideration.
Yeah. So Commissioner Brown, it sounds like you and I both had a similar thought on how we might be able to find some more common ground. And I'd like to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out in my mind kind of, if you will, a way around this, because I do understand your situation and we do not want to pile on, already the challenges that you face. At the same time, there's no space in the code for differentiating between a local and a second homeowner. And my concern would be that if we made an exemption or discount or something like that because you're a local, not only we would be setting a precedent that we'd have to, figure out going forward. And as Lance said, how do you actually define that and who's it's, all that. But we might open ourselves up to some sort of a civil rights lawsuit from a second homeowner who says, what is the reason, for having a lower fee for a local versus a non-local. And so that's a concern of mine. And I thought through, like, I feel like I wasn't here in 2022 or 23 when this was refined, maybe at the very end of 2023, but my understanding is that a lot of thought was put into how can we protect locals with this fee. And one thing we've already talked about is the 2,000-foot break cut point. Another one is the option to deed restrict. And if indeed this is, you are a local and you plan to live here forever, that's an option. That is an option. The other thing is this graduated or sliding scale mitigation rate. So right now, your calculation is 0.38 employees, but you're only required, because your house is smaller, to mitigate that at 25.3%. If you were building a bigger house, it would go up, right? And to the point where if your house was like 4,000, I can't remember where it actually maxes out, 5,000, it's a 75% mitigation fee. So those are three very specific inclusions in the code that were made in order to try to, support smaller homes, really, which, as we all know, are generally occupied by locals. So I don't want you to think that this wasn't already considered. So anyway, as I've been thinking through this, this is a question for the planning department and the attorney. I mean, can we make an exception simply because it's a local family? I can't come up with any legal basis for that, can I? And in fact, I feel like we would open ourselves up to real issues. Mike?
I don't think any of us are questioning whether Jesse and Leah are locals. The reality, though, is looking at last year's sales snapshot, over 90% of the primary homes in the unincorporated county were sold to non-primary residents. So I have no doubt that they're telling us 100% the truth. The reality is, though, in time, that home is more likely to be sold to as a second home down the road. And at that point, then there is maintenance and other employees that are generated. And how do we mitigate for that? Because we can't go in and mitigate at that point. So Jared and I were brainstorming, and I think what we would like to discuss is not, we can't do right here, right now, but we have some ideas that we'd like to approach the board about in a future work session to maybe address that issue.
Which issue? Sorry,
About other means to ensure that a home that is going to be built as a local's home stays in the hands of a primary resident.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that would probably require some of that government oversight that you're trying to avoid.
Well, can I make a brief comment on that? Leah had mentioned that we actually owned our own home in Placerville. We were fortunate to make the move here in 2019, right before the COVID downturn. And that was at a time when real estate prices were still somewhat favorable, as we can all recollect. And as a personal, we sold that home in order to continue on into our future endeavors, potentially building her. But what we took into strong consideration when making that decision was whom we sold that home to. And we made the decision as a couple to sell that home to another couple who has lived and worked in this community, and they were in a favorable rental situation, but wanted to continue on and take that next stepping stone into what we all need in an attempt to try to raise families, continue to stay here. So we underwent the sale of our home in Placerville at a reasonably discounted rate to attempt to try to house locals, because we care about this community. And we care about our friends having places to live. So if that in any way is somewhat something that you can incorporate into a situation such as this.
And
Hmm.
I respect that immensely. When I moved here in 2019, I interviewed only local families in the community of Leadville where I was from, and I sold my home for 60,000 less than the appraised value to a local family. They got divorced last year and sold it to a second homeowner because they needed the money,
Mm-hmm.
and it kills me.
Yeah,
I understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
Jesse, I think that it's important for us to somehow don't feel that we're battering your local cred.
I
get it.
in no way
And
feel
so
that way.
the story that you just told, the story that Mike just told, all those are true, but they're not really relevant to what we have to figure out today.
I understand.
Okay, so with that, I think we need to circle back to what do have as tools in front of us to try to adjust with the language that we have. And the only avenue that I can find is the one that I mentioned earlier. I'm not sure if it made full sense to you, but if it did, then I'd ask you to ask the board to continue this or to hold this decision while you take the time to provide a different calculation, which is your right. And with that, we'll run that through the process with the planning department. It probably will come back to the commissioners for a final decision. And we'll be able to put this to bed. If that isn't the avenue that you want to follow, then I think Ann and I are gonna have to make a really hard vote.
Yeah, and I understand, and on that note, I most certainly would like to, as I said in my letter, we're going to attempt to find every possible way to try to continue to chip away at this fee. And this being an avenue to do so, I most certainly would like to undergo it and continue to research it.
Okay.
I'm not in a position where I'm fully knowledgeable enough yet to be able to make any sort of decision on that
Sure.
matter today.
Not necessary.
Just asking you if that's what you wanna do.
Look more in depth into the code as far as that employee generation
Great.
number. And what that is defined as, et cetera, but yes, I most certainly would take you up on that.
Great.
That's terrific. And I think maybe Kay, are you available to maybe help Jesse understand a little better that calculation and the factor that we are suggesting he may be able to adjust and maybe even I know that employee generation factor was determined by a study. And so if he knew a little bit more about how that factor was determined, he might be able to help us adjust it.
You get to read the study.
Yeah, our planning department is great at talking people through things. Let me tell you, they talk me through things all the time. So I'm sure that would be helpful. All right. Any other comments from the staff or the Lamb family?
To get on with the meeting.
All right. Thank you, Jesse.
I
Oh, Jared.
I was going to suggest, because this is an appeal hearing, that we probably need a motion
Yes,
to continue.
yes.
Well, I would suggest that, similar to what you did for the Hayden View project, where you uphold the decision for the fee, but so you direct us to prepare a resolution, and we'll come back to you at a later meeting. But it would be to uphold, but with direction to work with the applicant to refund any fees if the floor area is reduced. And then also, if an alternative employee calculation is submitted that is supportable by the code and the study, to also recalculate and issue any refunds as appropriate. More.
I think
kind
we
of-
need to have an alternative calculation reviewed by the board under the code.
Oh, correct.
So we can't
Yeah.
preemptively
That's right.
approve an alternative calculation.
I forgot about that sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I'd rather not write up a resolution and then have to write up another one. So given what Maura just said, I think, can we just continue this conversation or this
Yeah,
appeal?
I think so. I would ask, and maybe we can deal with this over email, but because the board is under the code required to issue its written decision within 30 days of the appeal hearing, even though we're continuing, I think I would just want to make sure we have consent from the appellant to potentially exceed that 30-day decision deadline. If we need more time than that to have an alternative calculation
Sure.
developed and submitted and then brought back before the board.
So could we ask the Lambs if we could have 30 days from whenever they resubmit their appeal? Is that what you're suggesting?
From whenever we have the continued hearing discussion.
Oh, I see. Oh, wait, I don't see. Sorry.
So
We have 30 days from today to make a decision or 30
Yeah.
days?
Unless the appellant requests or authorizes an additional amount for them to work with planning, us to
Mhm.
schedule a second meeting. Because that 30 days runs from today unless they agree for it to go longer
Okay.
for this ensuing process.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Would it make things simpler if we just simply denied this appeal and then he had another opportunity, but you only get one shot, right?
Right.
Okay, so we're giving you a second shot and we're asking that we have, that we can take the time to do this right. So that means that we would have 30 days, not from today to make the decision, because if we did, it might not be the best decision, but 30 days from when you come back with your second approach to the appeal.
Does that entail that I'm required to go through the entire process of submitting an appeal through SmartGov?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
I
what
think
we do is you keep this appeal open.
Mm-hmm.
And I would suggest that it be a motion for continuance for up to, let's say, 60 days. And that should give us an idea of whether or not we're going to be able to work out these details. And that is subject to the appellant agreeing to waive
That timeframe.
the timing requirements of the land use code.
Okay, so 60 days would give the Lambs time to understand more about how the employee generation factor is calculated, to suggest a different one, for you to review it, have a little bit of back and forth, and then schedule this on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay. That seems fair to me. Are you guys comfortable with that? Okay.
Yes.
Great. I move to continue this appeal, subject for 60 days, subject to the appellant agreeing to extend the timing as is currently written in the land use code.
Second. How do you vote?
How about
I as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Nice
you.
job, Commissioner Lamb. Oh, buddy, you never know. Thank you, Kay.
It's the only one that counts.
So, thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye, Leah. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.
Too.
I was seriously building our house, pregnant, had the baby, moved in. Yeah, it's a lot.
It's so fun.
With a
Makes me
2-year-old.
bored.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, let's take take a recess until 11:30. How's that? Okay.
You know, the kicker is,
All right.
Okay.
On. Ready to go back in, or to come?
We're pretty close.
Hey.
Good to go?
Yeah,
Good to go. Hello, San Miguel County. It is 11:31 a.m. on Wednesday, August 6th. We are continuing our regular meeting. We are going to leapfrog back to manager matters, item number 10. We started that earlier and are ready to revisit. What other matters does the manager have to discuss? What is?
Just two brief updates. First is we gave the notice to proceed yesterday afternoon to the contractors on the Tomboy project. They are mobilized and are undergoing excavation and drilling today. So we will know a lot more in a week once they've been able to excavate a significant amount of the rock as to potential completion date. And I am in regular contact with tour operators as well as John Jett for the Imogene Pass race, but we will be able to allow the race in its historic route regardless on September, I believe it's 6th.
You gonna run that, Mike?
Nope. Running's for criminals. I now ride a bicycle. Met with Tom Kennedy and CDOT and have a meeting again with them next week to discuss some of the delays in their access permit as it pertains to the transfer of property that is proposed to the Telluride Medical District. Obviously, we're still waiting for their final plat application, and that is the largest item, as I understand, remaining for them to be able to submit their final plat application to the commissioners. The request for proposals that we put out and that the board authorized with Commissioners Gleason and Brown last week, I let Commissioner Waring know that you had authorized 57P and 60M as the first two roads in that contract. We are working through drawing up that contract, but Mike Kimball with Ground Founders has agreed to those roads and is getting his equipment ready and will be able to complete both of those this fall. We're also working with Desert Mountain, our mag chloride provider, to ensure that they can mag the road as soon as it's been done so that we can hold the integrity of the newly improved road surface.
Excellent news.
And then the last thing is Jared has been working through numerous wage and benefit and insurance cost scenarios as it applies to our budget. And I think we're likely to come to you next week with some potential ballot questions. I know that's the two seem unrelated, but with the significant increase in our health insurance, vision, etc., as well as even lesser scenarios, we will not be able to implement the recommendations from the wage study fully. So we're looking at multiple different scenarios to bring to the board, but it all ties into with the new revenue restriction limits. We're going to have to make some hard decisions in this year's budget cycle of where to allocate funds. And for that purpose, we also want to get the board's thoughts next week on a couple of different ways we may word a ballot question to allow the revenue capturing for things such as the early childhood, the mental health, and roads funding. Just those three are what we're discussing so far.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Not yet, but I bet we will next week.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Jared, anything to add?
I think the only thing that I wanted to add, commissioners, is there is no planning commission meeting next Thursday. So just to be sure, I know it remains on a few calendars. We do not have a published agenda. There's no planning commission meeting next Thursday, which would have been our regular schedule.
Thank you.
Just for public awareness as well. And tomorrow, just for commissioners' information in the public, we are having our employee picnic down Valley Park tomorrow afternoon. And so we do appreciate the ability to go and kind of break bread with our colleagues and have have a nice break in the afternoon. Every once in a while, once a year. To be certain. That's all I've got.
All righty.
Any questions?
No, none from me. Commissioner Waring, do you have an update for us?
Sure, couple small matters, but important. I attended a Region 10 executive board meeting on July 24th, and we had a great presentation about the slow advent of broadband coming across the divide on Highway 70. Mike has been tracking that carefully, and I feel finally like I am also a little more up to speed. Presenter was actually the engineer and turns out to be the chief repairman as well. He's based out of Crested Butte, and he was fabulous. He spoke in layman's terms, talked about when things break, how he gets in his Subaru and drives to the point where there's a problem and gets the parts and fixes it with his own two hands, and how he also was working with all the various entities and funding sources to make this project happen. And it's working. So there is slowly broadband coming from Denver and from Salt Lake, and eventually we'll have a full loop, which will be good news. And Region 10 is going to try to get out of the broadband ownership business eventually, and we'll see how that all plays out after project is complete. Had a meeting just to debrief the CC4CA annual meeting, and it was a kind of check in on how the organization's structure worked and plans for next year. Generally, it was very successful. The after event survey was across the board positive, and the group continues to gain momentum and strength and membership across the state.
Great.
We had a very brief San Miguel Regional Housing Authority meeting yesterday. And the one decision the board made was to shift the responsibility for tracking vouchers for the housing voucher program from SMRHA to the state. And that was a suggestion that was made to reduce the amount of our staff time necessary. And the state has systems in place to do that, and has offered to do that for other communities, and is willing to do that for ours. So it just made perfect sense to try to free up some time for our team to focus a little more on the things the state cannot do.
That's terrific.
Yeah, it seemed to be an easy call, a no-brainer, as they say. The only other meeting that I attended was also yesterday afternoon, and that was an all areas fire West Region Wildfire Council meeting. And after kind of general fire updates from a lot of the folks that are managing the various fires in our region, there was a presentation by a PhD scholar about a new way to look at the WUI, and it was very technical, very complex, and I didn't track all of it because he's still in process and it's not anywhere near ready for use, but it is an interesting angle. And the one thing that I wanted to share, Anne, is that we may start hearing about the WUI defined in two different terms. One is an interface versus an intermix. And an example of an interface in our region would be Lawson Hill, where there's a edge to the subdivision and there's homes right at the edge, and then there's forest immediately adjacent, versus an intermix, which I guess would be perhaps ski ranches where there's homes throughout the forest.
Interesting.
And the firefighting and preventative measures required are different, obviously, but he dug into it for an hour and a half.
Oh my.
As to what was the difference and why, and what could be done differently in those two different fundamental buckets. So I didn't manage to capture all the details, and I'll be honest, it was a little over my head, but it was fascinating to hear the conversation between the experts afterwards. Question.
I'm sure they were fascinated.
They were, but they also had fires to attend to, literally, and so it
Mm.
was a little tricky to get everyone to engage because their phones kept going off. There's a lot of activity. Just as an aside, the South Rim Fire above the Black Canyon is 97% contained,
Hmm.
which is good news, but it is still, I'm sorry, that's Deer Creek. Pardon me, I got my fires confused. Deer Creek is the one over by the south. That is 97% contained. The Sow Belly Fire, which is beyond our county lines by quite a ways, over on the Utah line, is mostly BLM and USFS, and that is also getting towards containment on the high end of percentage. And the one that was most discussed is Lulu Creek, which is near Hotchkiss, and that flared up 48 hours ago. And they spent $2 million in retardant and heavy aircraft. They used the biggest 5B fighters and were able to knock that down without losing structures in the town of Hotchkiss, which was evacuated.
Wow.
Things were tense there, but sound like they're better.
Okay, wow.
The fire near Rica was not on the discussion table because it was so new that no one had any updated information, but Jared's been tracking that, and it sounds like it's burning at 250 acres currently and is within spitting distance of Dunn. So
Of Dunton.
so the west is on fire, and we are going to be hitting level stage 2 fire ban across the county and across the National Forest and BLM lands as of Friday.
I heard on the news maybe Wednesday that the South Rim fire was 52% contained, which actually I was surprised it wasn't more because they've reopened the park on the North Rim, but I guess that's far enough away that they can welcome guests. Thanks for all that, Lance. I don't have too much to report since last week. Just I did attend the Thyroid Foundation 25th anniversary celebration, which was down at the base of the gondola on Friday night, the 1st. That was super fun. And I'm trying to see, I don't think there were any other, commissioner type meetings. So that was my big event for the week.
Sounds like a good one.
It was a good one. Free drinks and dinner. Okay, that's it. Shifting to item 12, attorney matters. Anything for us today, Maura?
I don't have anything for you.
No. Oh, I should have mentioned that tomorrow morning early, I leave for CCAT. And I'll be in Avon with CCAT on Thursday and Friday. And then I'm out of the office next week, returning on the 18th, but I do plan to attend the meeting next Wednesday remotely. It would be helpful though if you chaired it, Lance, since I'm not in the room. Are you okay with that?
Yes, have you set the agenda?
We will work on the agenda this afternoon. Yeah, I'm looking at Carmen and everybody. Yeah, I will handle the agenda if you could handle the running the meeting. Thank you.
On that note, I guess I'll just remind you that I'll be joining you the next 2 meetings remotely. And then I will be out for the meeting on the 27th, that whole week. And back.
The meeting on the 27th, okay. And then and what about the 3rd of
I'll be
September?
remote for that meeting as well. And I'll
Okay.
be back the following week in
Okay.
person.
Okay, good, all right. And when we see you next, you will be married.
Yeah. Yeah, next time you see me in person.
Next time I see you in person, you'll be
Yeah.
married, okay. We wish you the
All goes
best.
as planned.
We wish you the best. All right, anything else, or are we ready for a motion to adjourn early?
So moved.
Second, how do you vote? I as well. Ding, ding, we're done. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.